Education for formation is the process of students learning how to regulate their behaviors, their emotions, develop their identities, really see themselves as change makers and people that have the power to make a difference in their community. And so I really think that education for formation is a process where students go through phases to develop themselves so that they can interact with others positively and productively. Islamic schools in America tend to focus more heavily on the moral side of educating for formation. And by that I mean they focus on what's called akhlaq, which is basically the habits and behaviors that a Muslim should exhibit. And these are based on the example of the Prophet Muhammad and other prophets before him and stories from the Quran. And so these habits and behaviors that one exhibits is synonymous with character. And so this might translate into a civically minded student or a performance-based student, but it is really heavily focused on the moral side. Story is used very heavily in Islamic schools and Islamic learning environments to teach character. And by that I mean some stories in the Quran, very short stories about situations that occurred in the past with different prophets, might be used to demonstrate some sort of moral or ethic lesson. Also, the stories about Prophet Muhammad are used almost the majority of the time, and these are examples from his life in which he demonstrated certain character values that we should identify with and copy. Also, his biography is probably the most valued story in the sense of his life being seen as an example to follow, and so that's another example of how Muslims would use stories to teach character. An example of a story that Muslims use a lot from Prophet Muhammad's life is how he interacted with his wife Aisha. For example, there's a story I was just hearing the other day where she was trying to get onto a camel, and so he kneeled down and let her step on his leg. And so that was supposed to show that he really valued her safety. He wanted to show her that he'll do anything for her. And so that's kind of an example for young men to think about how they would eventually treat their wives in the future.